The loudest, the biggest, the brashest. New York is its own character in every play.
The bad thing about New York is the pressure. You're always under pressure.
Here are the stories about those plays. It's New York Accent with Damon Amendolara.
Welcome inside New York Accent, everybody. Damon Amendolara, DA with you. And it's always our great pleasure to welcome on guests that have played in New York, won in New York, or are from New York. And our next guest has 4 World Series rings with the New York Yankees. He was also a witness of 2 perfect games as a player and now 1 as a broadcaster. You watch him on the Yes Network as a color analyst for the Yankees, also a member of the Bally Sports Florida team as well. Joining us here on the show is Jeff Nelson. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. In St. Louis, where it's 100 degrees. So, I kind of like the heat. Oakland was in the 50s, and now we add 50 to that, and that's where we are in St. Louis.
One of my favorite quotes is the coldest winter I ever experienced was summer in the Bay Area. Yeah. So you guys were out there earlier in the week as Domingo German throws the perfect game for the New York Yankees. And as I just mentioned, you had been experiencing this as a player in 98 and 99. Did you get any of the same vibes or flashbacks as what you saw Coney and Wells do?
I did, as a player, you're sitting in the booth and everything starts coming back as a player. And when I was sitting in the bullpen at those times, you don't want to do anything different. You start doing things, the superstition starts becoming even more important as far as, hey, don't move, don't do anything different. If you're drinking a cup, keep it. Don't change the cups, don't change the seats, don't, start talking to the same people, don't start doing anything different. I find myself doing the same thing in the booth.
Really?
I'm like, I'm not throwing my tea away. My hot tea became iced tea. And, I'm not throwing any papers away. I'm doing the same thing. And Ryan Ruocco's next to me to my left, and he's standing up. I'm like, okay, it's the last couple innings. Do I stand up? If I stand up, I might mess this thing up. And then Meredith Marakovits was to my right, and it was cold. It was chilly, and there's no heat in the booth. And she had her sweatshirt on. Now, she had to go down and, prepare for the end of the game to do interviews. And all of a sudden, she started taking her shirt off, and her sweatshirt off. And I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? You taking your sweatshirt off? You're going to mess this thing up. And it's just ridiculous stuff you start thinking about.
So when you're a player, I'm sure you're aware of the broadcaster anti-jinx. Don't mention the no-hitter. Don't mention the perfect game. You can jinx it. I don't know how you felt as a player. Maybe you thought that was crazy. Now, as a broadcaster, were you guys avoiding mentioning it by name?
As a player, you never do. You never mention it. So I was like, okay, I'm not mentioning it. And I know a lot of people are like, that superstition stuff and the old don't mention a no-hitter or a perfect game. That's, that's for the birds. Now, the radio side, they mentioned it. And we danced around it. Ryan Ruocco did a great job of dancing around it and not calling it a perfect game, not even calling it perfect, but dance around the words. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to be the first one saying it. If the first one's going to be saying it, it's going to be Ryan. So we did a great job at dancing around it. I'm like, I was a part of them in 98 and 99 and with Coney and Wells, and everybody knew what Coney and Wells did. So without me saying, hey, they had a perfect game back then, and we might be witnessing the same thing. So we did a good job, not saying the word.
You guys had talked about this after the broadcast, that perhaps because of the suspension and because of his previous 2 outings, Domingo German might have been pitching for his spot in the rotation, also with some other bodies coming back into the rotation. Do you think that locked him in more than usual for that performance?
I don't know. He's he's a quirky pitcher in a sense that, he can dominate. I think it was last year, he was one of the most consistent starters last year. I mean, he would go deep in the game. He has the tendency to, not get his pitch count elevated. The last 2 outings were awful, but the outings before those 2, he pitched against the Dodgers, and I forget who else, but he got into the 7th inning against the Dodgers, pitched 6 innings the next outing, and he only gave up 1 run in each of those outings. And the next thing you know, he lays 2 eggs. So he may not even have been in this rotation to start the season, because you had Montas, you had Rodon, and also Nestor Cortez, and those 3 would have been in there. And okay, you're probably a bullpen guy or a swing guy. So who knows if he would have been pitching for his rotational spot, but I don't think that motivated him. I just think he has this kind of stuff. He's capable. I mean, not throwing a perfect game all the time, but he's capable of doing what he did against the A's.
The David Wells Perfecto goes down in history. I was actually randomly at that game. That is Beanie Babies game. That is Beanie
Yes.
Babies
Yeah.
Day. And he was infamously hung over from the night before and goes out there and puts his hand on his head as the final out is recorded. And so it goes down in lore. Did you guys know going into that day that Wells was feeling it from the night before?
No, we had no idea. But the thing of it is if those guys don't go out, I'm not saying they go out and get hammered all the time, but if they don't go out and settle themselves down, and that's just with David Cohn and David Wells, just to have a couple drinks at nighttime just to settle their nerves down. This is how they go about the way they start. And that's perfect because they've had such great success doing that. And I think it helps them not think about their start. That's one of the things I couldn't do. I couldn't start because I would start thinking about that start right away. And it just drives you nuts. And it was their way to probably, hey, get me off of whatever I'm supposed to do the next day. I'll lock in when I go to the park. So nobody knew, but it wasn't as far as him having a couple drinks. I mean, he usually does that. So it wasn't, I guess it was a surprise finding out of what he did until the early morning, but not as far as having drinks.
Let me tell you, I've never seen anybody command a bar like David Wells. I was actually in San Francisco for the Super Bowl one year, and he was out there as well. And we met up at a bar, not because he was there to meet me, but just because he
Yeah.
was there. So we said hello, and people started recognizing him one by one, wanted to come up, shake his hand, take a picture, buy him a beer. And he said
Yeah.
yes. He said yes to every one of those beers, to the point where people were buying him JMO shots, and he was like, "Let's do those too." And the entire bar was like chanting and cheering alongside him, and he was loving every minute of it. I said, this is the lore of Boomer Wells. He's the most popular guy. Have you ever seen him hold court like that?
He is a very outgoing guy. I loved him as a teammate. He was such a great competitor and a great guy off the field. Most of the time I probably couldn't hang with those guys as long as I might be able to hang with it for a couple hours, but
Right.
as hard as they go, my liver would be done. But he's a very outgoing, full of life, happy, and he'll talk to everyone. That's just the way he is.
What a touched baseball life for you to have been present for 3 perfect games of the 4 in Yankees history. And the David Cohn game is filled with magic as well, because it's Yogi Berra Day of
Right.
all days, who caught Don Larson's perfect game. How special and how mystical did that day feel at the old stadium?
Yeah, it's really, you think about it, it's really strange to have, Don Larson and Yogi Berra there witnessing David Cohn and Joe Girardi, behind the plate. And, you had Beanie Baby Day for David Wells. It's just a shame that we were out in Oakland and Herman throws a perfect game, and there was nothing special about that as far as giveaway night. It was just the Yankees were in town playing the A's. But it just, goes to show you with different special things that happen. I got lucky last year, even calling with John Sterling, Aaron Judge's 62nd home run in Texas. I was like, wow. I mean, my limited amount of broadcast career, I've gotten to call a few big moments. And, even this year we were in Philadelphia, and the Marlins have never had a cycle by any player in history. And Luis Ariz hits the first cycle in history. And I was there with Paul Severino calling that. So I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, what's next?
You've got a touchstone of epic baseball moments. Now, the question is, in Oakland, did you see the raccoon or the possum, one of the two, that runs the press box back there?
Yeah, I wanted to. I wanted to get with it. And apparently they buttoned everything up. I mean, they had duct tape all over the place. I think now they have a on-site exterminator in case
Good.
that happens. They put in a semi-new wood floor. So unfortunately, we didn't get to see him or her, whatever it was.
You began your career with the Seattle Mariners and then are traded to the New York Yankees with Tino Martinez in the Sterling Hitchcock deal. And so 2 of the anchors of that dynasty Yankee team, yourself and Tino, come over in that trade. What's your feelings when you arrive in New York during a time before the dynasty was born?
Yeah, in some ways I was surprised that we both got traded because I thought we would come back as Mariners. I mean, we went to the ALCS in '95. Maybe we were going to try to do it again. But you got traded to a team that we just beat in '95. So you knew they had a great chance of going back to the playoffs as well. Plus, I absolutely loved pitching in old Yankee Stadium. So, it wasn't like you were getting traded to a last place team or a team that, has no shot of making the playoffs. You're getting traded to the New York Yankees. And, at least if you weren't going to be a Mariner, hey, and I grew up in Baltimore, I thought I'd probably be an Oriole way before I was a Yankee. But you get traded to such a historical franchise, it's like, hey, this isn't bad, And then all of a sudden you go and you're in spring training with some of the greats that I played against, and unfortunately Mattingly wasn't there, but Tino I played with since minor league ball every single year, so there was some familiarity there. And, just putting on the pinstripes the first time, was incredible.
Why did you love pitching at Old Yankee Stadium?
I think the fans are so passionate. It's just such mayhem. And as a visitor, they really let you have it. And I think it's great. They, as a home player, they let you have it on occasion as well if you're not doing well. But it was just, I guess the history and even East Coast sports in general, wherever you're playing in Baltimore, Philly, Boston, those fans are such passionate fans. So as a visitor, or even a home team, you're getting the best fans. You're getting, things that you've probably never heard before, and come out of people's mouths and little kids' mouths or whatever. But the excitement, I think, drove me to like it a lot, and you really feed off of that kind of excitement from a fan.
What a moment in time to arrive as the Yankees are going on that roller coaster ride. And you were part of all four championships, 96, and then 98, 99, and 2000. What do you remember from the first one in 96 in Game 6 against the Braves when you guys clinched it home?
Well, it was one that we never had. We didn't have interleague play back then. So the only thing that we knew was what we saw on TV. And we knew they had great pitching. They had a great team. We witnessed that the first couple games in Yankee Stadium, Game 1 and Game 2. We're like, wow, they were just carving people up. And watching Greg Maddux throw, it was just amazing how he just outguessed and knew exactly what hitters were looking for and threw the opposite pitch. So, as the series kept going on, we kept getting more confident. We had a long layover between the ALCS and the World Series, and I think that hurt us a little bit to start. But then we come back, we win the first three. Everybody's counting us out. The Braves are counting us out. Then we lose the first two, win the next three, and we come home and we pretty much know that we're going to win it at Yankee Stadium. And then you just don't get complacent. I mean, we had an owner, Mr. Steinbrenner, never allowed us to get complacent. He constantly wanting to win every single year. So it wasn't one of those things, hey, we're satisfied with one. You got to go and get more.
That's pretty amazing. And you were there for the three-peat as well. And I'm wondering, did the pressure of trying to do it every single year begin to emotionally, mentally wear on you guys by the time you get to 99 and 2000?
No, I think it was this excitement that drove us. I mean, everybody had a desire to get back. I don't think there was any pressure at all. If you look at 98, we won 114 games in the regular season. So maybe that was probably more pressure of getting to the World Series and winning the World Series, because you win so many ball games, you don't want to all of a sudden lose it. And then the next thing you know, 114 means nothing. I mean, I was in Seattle when 01, we won 116 and we didn't finish it off. So, hey, you had a great year, but that was it. Okay, 116. I think it's probably, most likely won't ever be, heard of or seen again. But as far as the pressures every year, it was just, everybody on the team had a desire to get back. And, it was just so much fun getting to that World Series, winning the World Series. And you never got satisfied. You always want more. You always want to win more.
You always also had veterans at the end of their careers, perhaps looking for the elusive championship. And I'm wondering, those guys that cycled through, did that help keep a thirst and a hunger up because they hadn't done it, whereas maybe some of the guys that were on the team for a couple of years already had some rings?
Yeah, I think so. You look, it seemed like Mr. Steinbrenner always wanted to mix things up. We won 125 games in 98. the next thing you know, in '99 in spring training, David Wells and Graham Lloyd get traded, and here comes Roger Clemens. It's like, well, I thought we were going to try to repeat with the same team, and all of a sudden we get a superstar pitcher. And then you're trying to do it for him. David Justice comes over to us in 2000 and could have been our MVP. And I was just reading, I think he just got traded. I mean, it was a few days ago on the date that he got traded to the Yankees back in 2000. So it was constantly mixing it up. He would keep the core. I mean, he would keep probably 18 to 20 guys, and then all of a sudden 5 guys would come back and they wouldn't be there the next year, and you get superstar players. I lived in Seattle, and some of my best friends were Jay Buhner and Ken Griffey Jr. And the next thing you know, I'd be going over to their house, and it's like, hey, can you believe you got Chuck Knobloch? Is that all you guys do is get better? Oh, you got Roger Clemens? Are you kidding me? But it was just those kind of, and you would laugh. You're like, hey, well, it looks like we have a great shot at winning another one.
It was an amazing time because those Yankees just simply couldn't be beaten in big games. They just always seemed to lurk like a horror film slasher, and then they would strike. And you were part of that for a number of years. But as you said, in '01, you were on the other side because you were with the Mariners, historically great season. You get through the Indians in the divisional round and then face off against the Yankees of the ALCS. Your regular season would suggest that you guys were a better team than the Yankees, but they took the first 2, you got game 3, and then they took the next 2 and win in 5. What was it about the Yankees team when you were on the opposite end that you saw come back to haunt you when you were with the Mariners?
Well, you mentioned big games, and when you're playing at Yankee Stadium, even during the regular season, every game seems like a big game. Whether it's the media, Mr. Starman, or the fans, you lose one, it's like, the road's going to cave in, but so every game is big. So playing in the playoffs in New York, yes, there was pressure, but it was a lot less because you had the pressures of winning every single day. And in Seattle, there wasn't those pressures. It was like, it was just guys were just happy to be there. I mean, we won 116, and you want to win it. You wanted to win it for the team. The organization, the city. Lou Piniella, he wanted to get to the Mariners, to the World Series. But being on the other side, and being in the playoffs takes a certain mentality. And we just I don't think we had that. Offensively in Seattle, I think we did. But starting pitching wise, I don't think the mentality was there for Seattle. And there were some of the relievers that were down in the bullpen that just didn't have good postseason history, and it wound up showing against the Yankees.
It's kind of a crushing end to a wonderful season because it's also the last time before last year that the Mariners make the playoffs. Right. So it begins just a crazy drought, but that was an iconic regular season. To be part of the Yankees now as a broadcaster, and as you mentioned, be part of some historic moments on the call of Judge's 62 last year and Domingo German's perfect game. What's that relationship like that with the organization and the history of the game and the team that you now have from a different vantage point?
Yeah, it's a team that I always root for. I still root for the Yankees, and one of the few teams I do. And the organization is so great. The players are so welcoming, and they talk to you, and no matter who they are, the coaches are great. The organization, the Yankees have always done a great job of keeping their alumni involved, whether it's appearances at the stadium or fantasy camps. But being a broadcaster is a little bit different. And I know the game's hard. And, I'm a guy that I'm not going to sugarcoat things as far as, if they did something that wasn't great on the field, I'll explain why they didn't. Not that, this guy is a terrible player. But if they do something well on the field, I'm going to say, hey, look at this play. This is a great play, or this is a great pitch. And if it's not that great, then I'll say, hey, you know what? Maybe if they would have done this differently, then it probably would have turned out better. But the game's so hard, and guys go up and down as far as struggles. And, I have had the same success as they had. I've had the same failure as they had. So it's easier for me to kind of project that when you've had both and you relate to what they're going through, whether it's a great series or a poor series.
Let's wrap up then without sugarcoating this. What do you think the Yankees' potential is this year to potentially get to October and beyond?
Yeah, it's with every team. I think everybody's saying, hey, they got to get healthy. You need your starting pitching back. You need Rodon. You need Nestor Cortez to come back. Severino to get more consistent. He's only had 7 starts, so hopefully that gets a little bit better. you need Aaron Judge back. He'll be back. Sometime after the All-Star break, whether it's the end of July, beginning of August. I'm not sure about that. This is a playoff team. I don't know about the division. They have the Orioles that's been outstanding, and the Rays got off to such a great start, and they're a really good team. But the Yankees will be there. It's going to be a little bit more of a challenge if they have to play that wild card game when it's the best 2 out of 3. So then you have to go through 3 levels to get to the World Series. But it's a very good team, and the expectation level is through the roof. And I think they make the playoffs. It's just a matter if they can stay healthy and be consistent and how far they go.
Jeff Nelson was part of some of the greatest Yankee teams ever, certainly the last great Yankee dynasty between 96 and 2000, and just called the Domingo German perfect game in Oakland last week for the Yes Network. So kind enough to join us here on New York Accent. You can watch him on the Yes Network. He's also part of Bally Sports Florida as well as an analyst there, and you can follow him on Twitter as well for the latest on his thoughts on the Yankees moving forward through the summer and then potentially into the fall. Jeff, I appreciate the time very much. Thanks for being patient as I'm feeding my son here. You're a good man and a father of 4 girls, so you've seen intense situations beyond the baseball diamond. Coming in to hold a lead for Mariano or something like that in the playoffs of the World Series probably seems like child's play compared to raising 4 daughters.
Yeah, and changing diapers, exactly. I'd rather pitch than change diapers, but you had to do it. But it's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate it. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy New York Accent, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more episodes like this one. Also, if you want to watch more episodes of New York Accent, check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you for the next episode of New York Accent.